I've been so inspired by all the work that everyone has been sharing already and all the challenges. I want this to be a very safe, vulnerable place for us to work through what it takes to start something. And it really is a mental game. So keep that in mind. You know, some of us are established artists or writers or musicians who, you know, went to school for that and have been doing that in our career. Some of us have never done anything creative, and just keep that in mind and be open in this group to be kind of aware that we're all coming from different walks of life and different stages of our creativity, and we are all up against different walls of resistance and, you know, different reasons why it's hard to start. And let's just really be compassionate with everyone, because it's all relative. It really is. And we're all up against different issues. But I'm hoping we can overcome those in this challenge. So first of all, just like congratulate yourselves for being here, because, you know, it's just one of those things. We often put our personal creative pursuits kind of as the last possible thing to recognize that we want. And, you know, I would argue, I've been a creative person all my life. I would argue it's almost more important than exercise and like eating healthy and all the health and wellness stuff that we see is just like put up on a pedestal in our culture. If you feel that pull to be a creative person, it really is part of our mental health to give it attention. And I would argue it's more important than the other things that are recognized in our culture. And I think it's such a niche thing that it's not really, you know, I don't know, a part of our culture to really recognize, like, wow, if you feel the creative pull, you better do that, or you're going to get really depressed, or you're going to feel really numb, or you're just going to not be happy. You know, like feeling that fulfillment in our life is so important to just being whole if you're a creative person. And I'm about to share my story with you of why I've created this challenge and how I overcame just a deep slump in my life where I was not doing anything for my personal creative self for over 10 years. And I was just going on this slow decline. And I'm going to show you how I kind of came out of that. And I'm really hoping that it will help you. So in your workbook on the right-hand side, there's a little column that says objections/clues. And if you don't have the workbook, just, you know, keep a scrap piece of paper near you and just write down objections. And I want you to take note as I'm sharing my story, if there's anything that differs between my story and your story, because as I'm talking, your inner critic is going to pop up and say, well, that doesn't apply to me because I didn't go to art school, or Leanne's story doesn't apply to me because I have 4 kids and she only has 2, or Leanne's story doesn't apply to me because I have like 3 jobs and she only has a freelance career. There's going to be all these reasons why your inner critic is going to push up against what I'm sharing. And I want you to write those down, because those are clues that we're going to use tomorrow when we work through our limiting beliefs. So those are the signals. Those could possibly be the very key thing that has been preventing you this entire time from moving forward. So I'm about to share my screen in a minute, and I'm going to tell you my story. So write those down. Anything that comes up where you're like, that doesn't apply to me, or like, I have a different struggle, like I have a chronic illness, I have ADHD, anything that I'm sharing where I'm like, that Leanne's story is different than mine. I want you to write those down. Those are valuable, valuable clues. So I'm going to get into my story of why I'm doing this challenge in the first place. So my name is Leanne Brennan, for those of you who do not know me, and I have a lot of new people here this time, which is so exciting. I am an artist. So right now I am a digital artist. So I work on Procreate on my iPad for my personal self. So I make illustrations. You can see in the background, these black and white images. I have a shop where I sell my art prints, and I made an affirmation deck recently. So I turned all those drawings into a card deck. So that's what I'm doing for my personal self. It's all these drawings about mindset and manifestation. For my day job, I'm a freelance motion designer, which is just a fancy title for animator. So I've been working with, big companies like Fidelity Investments and United Healthcare and Southwest Airlines, like big companies. I've been doing this for the past 12 years, where I'm a motion designer and I help them in their innovation teams kind of craft these explainer videos for internal presentations. And before that, I worked in the video game industry. I was very lucky to get in on a small company called Harmonix, which made Guitar Hero and Rock Band and all those amazing music games. And I was on the character art team right out of college. So I have been in the art field for a very long time. And that's kind of part of my story, is that ever since college, I've been applying my creative skills at work, and that was super exciting. And I was so grateful and excited to be, amongst all these creative people and creating all this, videos and art. But I wasn't doing anything for my soul, like my personal creative self, which is why I went to art school in the first place, is because I would spend hours in my room after school just drawing by myself with the music on, just pouring out from my heart. And I realized once I applied my creative skills at work, I no longer had I didn't have the space or like the encouragement, or I didn't feel motivated to do any personal artwork outside of work. And I just slowly started to slip into this very gradual state of unhappiness that really just crept up on me. And there was like this tipping point where I just fell into this deep depression, and it really surprised me. I was not expecting this to happen. So I started to feel like very disengaged from work. I was working full-time at an innovation consultancy in Boston. And I slowly realized like it was just taking every fiber of my being to do my day job. I was just not excited about it anymore. And then I had a baby. So the last time that I had done anything related to my personal artwork was in 2009, when I designed my wedding invitation. So it had been a long time. And it was like 2 years after I got married, or 3 years, I can't remember, I had my baby, and I decided to leave my job, which I was kind of excited about, because I was like, ooh, maybe I'll have time to work on my personal creative artwork. Little did I know, when you have a baby, there's not just like all of a sudden tons of time to do anything. And I didn't realize that during, this time of me working in my day job, I had linked my identity to my job title, because it was all I was doing to express myself creatively. So when I left my job, I was, I don't know, my daughter was 7 months old. She like wasn't handling daycare well. And I decided to leave my job and become a stay-at-home mom with her, in hopes to like do some sort of creative art. But I had just been slipping so fast into this depression before I had the baby. And then once I had the baby, I was just like not sleeping, all this stuff. And it just crushed me. I just couldn't do anything. And now I had this child that I had to take care of. And I remember at one point I tried to start a project. Once she started sleeping better, she was around 2 years old. I was like, I'm going to make an animation and I'm going to submit it to film festivals, and it's going to be amazing. Like, this project was way too big. I was like barely getting by. I don't know what I was thinking, but we get excited. And I started it and I was like, oh, I'm going to make it easy for myself. I'm just going to rotoscope, which just means like trace over frame by frame. I took a video of myself doing something, then I was going to trace over it, but it was way too complicated. And I ended up starting, I did like maybe 20 frames and then stopping. And then I didn't do anything again for another 2 years or something like that. And it wasn't until it was time to have my second child when I realized something's got to change, because I need something creative happening in my life during this like 0 to 2-year-old phase, when you just like are not sleeping and you're just in this cloud with, you know, all the responsibilities of caring for a child. So that's when I said, like, okay, I've got to get something creative going before this baby comes. So that was 2019. So I'm going to share my screen and show you this presentation that I have prepared for you. And you can kind of see my thought process of how I took this on, and it might help you if you're struggling to start your creative practice. So you can see my timeline. It's like 2019, I got pregnant. I was like, okay, what do I feel like doing? What would be easy? And let me know, type a 1 in the chat if you can see my screen. Hopefully you can. What would be easy? What do I feel like doing? And it was painting, actually. I was like, I just really feel like painting. And what I did was, actually, before I started painting in a way that was consistent, I started this big painting in my kitchen, and it was way too complicated. And I actually ended up gessoing over it. And then it waited another 6 months before I started really painting. So again, there was all these like starts and stops because I kept trying to do something that was too big. So it was finally at this moment when I think I was like 6 months out from having this baby. I'm like, okay, I've got to get something going or I'm going to slip into that deep depression again. And I was like, how can I lower the stakes with what I'm doing? How can I simplify this? And I was really into gut health at this time. I think because I was pregnant and I was just trying to like eat really healthy. So it's like, and again, I had this big idea for like, I'm going to be a painter and I'm going to get all these giant paintings into a gallery. And I had all these ideas for these really cool, like, cell images that I was going to make to like show the human like gut microbiome. But to start, I was like, okay, I get it. I have started and stopped enough times now. What I'm going to do is start really small on like throwaway canvas paper. So what I did was I bought this 6x6 canvas paper, which is like super cheap. I think a pad of this is like $7. And I was like, I'm just going to copy images off the internet of vegetables and fruit, just to start, just to do something, because it's somehow related to the topic that I'm interested in. So I got this picture of radishes off some website. It was like this kitchen blog, and I painted it on the canvas paper. And I set up my little drawing table and computer in our living room because my husband was working at home and he was in our like little office bedroom. So it was like right out in the open with this setup. Here's my daughter, who is now like 4 years old at this time, or 5, I think. And she wanted to paint next to me, which is like really cute, but also really challenging at times. But so you can see this little picture here of the printout, and then here's my painting. So it just was painting, just copying images that I got printed out at like FedEx or Staples or something. I got all these images off the internet of vegetable and fruit. I printed them out and then I just copied them with acrylic paints. And then one day I saw my friend post this crystal grid on her Instagram. And I was like, oh my gosh, what is that? And I was just fell in love with the reflections and the texture of all these crystals and stones. And I was like, ooh, I want to copy that. So I asked her permission. Her name is Heart Abundance on Instagram, if you want to check her out. And she said yes, that I could copy her image. And I painted it. And I started painting all these crystal grids. And I'm still pregnant at this time. And as I was going, I was loving it, but I was also kind of thinking, you know, I don't know much about these crystals. And I was starting to post them on Instagram, and people who are really into crystals were like talking about it. And I felt this weird, like, integrity issue. Like, I don't really know enough about these crystals to feel like I have a point of view here. And it was starting to feel wrong. And also the painting part of it, I was like, all right, if I'm gonna be, if I'm gonna be painting all of these paintings with this setup with like the acrylic paint and the water can, when my son arrives as an infant, I'm like, I don't really want to have paints around with a newborn baby. And it just started thinking in my head, I'm like months away from having this baby. You can see I'm pregnant here. And like, what am I gonna do? And I remembered I had this iPad and I had this program Procreate that I had started to play around with. And I'm like, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm just gonna make digital images, and it's gonna be no setup, no cleanup. And that's what I'm going to do. And so I started looking on Instagram for people's digital images, and I just fell in love with all of these artists who are doing these gorgeous images. And I was like, yeah, I want to do that. But there was a part of me that kept saying, like, Leanne, you're going to be so tired when this baby comes. You're going to have no time. It's too much. Like, you can't do something with texture and color and all this complicated stuff. And so my intuition just kept leading me towards like, okay, how can I simplify this even more? How can I do some digital drawing that's less complex? And that's when I started looking for comics, these black and white comics. And I found this woman, Cantana Comics, and Sarah Anderson. And it wasn't until I found Liana Fink that I was like, oh my gosh. And she just really broke my brain because I loved her messages, and her drawings were so simple. And they were just black and white, and they were just these scraggly little drawings. And she has, you know, over 600,000 followers. She has her work published in the New Yorker. She has books. And I just obsessed over her Instagram. I was like, this is enough. You know, why can't this be enough? And I had this fight with myself. I'm like, why do you always have to do something so complicated? You know, you're in a season in your life where that's just overwhelming. Like, why can't this be enough? Why can't you just make these little sketchy things with your iPad? You know, like, can that just be enough for once? Just like enjoy it. And so that's what I did. And I made a separate Instagram account. It was actually called Sell Empathy to start, because I thought I was going to be making comics about gut health, which is so funny. This is my very first post because I was too nervous to draw anything. So what I did was I found a quote that I loved and that applied to me. And I just hand lettered it in Procreate on my iPad. And when I say hand lettered, I literally just wrote the words. I didn't do anything else. And I was so nervous to post this because I don't know why. And it wasn't even a public Instagram account. I made a private Instagram account, and I was nervous to post my first post, but I did it, and I kept it private, and I kept drawing. And you know, the drawings kind of veered around. Like, sometimes I would draw what I was feeling. Like, there's this woman who's saying, like, I'm not ready. What will people think? This isn't good enough. And you'll notice the signature, you can't see it, it says cell empathy, because again, that's what I thought I was going to be doing. And then sometimes I would draw about, gut health and the microbiome, and it would just kind of swerve around until finally I landed on, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen and show you my Instagram. Finally, I realized, you know what, it's taking too much work to research about gut health. And I noticed that I was really enjoying making these drawings about mindset and manifestation. So this is my Instagram. And I noticed I slowly started incorporating, all these drawings about manifestation and mindset. And it was when I got to this one, the open the door one, I posted this in our Facebook group, that I was like, oh, this is what I like to do. So just by me starting here with these, with this quote, and then this thought of like, I'm going to make a gut health comic, just following my intuition, it led me to what I wanted to do. It taught me what it wanted to be. And when I got here, this is like the 20th image, I was like, oh, that's what I'm doing. I want to make, and there was still microbiome stuff creeping in here, but I started making more and more drawings about mindset and manifestation. And I was just loving it. I was having so much fun. And I just did drawing after drawing. I started making art prints. I made a journal. The journals aren't, available anymore. I figured out how to make a Shopify store because I was just so energized by this. And I had made the Instagram public. I got up the courage to make it public and slowly started getting followers. I'm like, how are these people even finding me? But just because I was showing up and doing these sketches, and the sketches started on paper. And a lot of times it was me literally just journaling in the morning, and then an image would pop into my head and I would draw it on paper because I couldn't use my iPad with my baby around, because, anytime you have a device with your child around, it's like, a moth to a flame. But if you're using paper, it's like kind of boring to them after a while. So they all started on paper. And then when I had time, during nap time or after my, kids went to bed, that's when I would bring it into Procreate. So I'm sharing this to show you like how I really lowered the stakes and took the pressure off with this desire to have a creative practice, and how it just led me to what it wanted to be, to where it wanted to go. And because I was like in this swirl of this energy with this project, everything started to like click, and it started to do little pieces here of like, how would I set up a website? And I like started to look into it a little bit. And then one night I would watch a little tutorial about Shopify. And then another night I would research like art prints, and I would ask people like, where do you get your prints printed? And all these little pieces just chipped away little by little while I was still doing the drawings. And now here I am just 2 years later with a website, with a store, with products, with like a card deck that I got manufactured overseas, like insane. Now a coaching program, and I'll tell you guys more about that on day 3. Like never in a million years would I have thought I'd be doing this. If you were to talk to me in 2019, when I was like pregnant with my son and just wanting to have a art practice so that I didn't get super depressed, if you were to tell me that I would have like a successful online store and coaching business, I'd be like, what are you talking about? But here I am, because it just slowly becomes what it's supposed to be when you can just like release the pressure that we put on ourselves. And that's what I'm trying to help everybody do. We just crush ourselves with like trying to force like, well, I want to make something that's going to make money, or if I do this, it better, have a point to it. And it's like when you can do what doesn't make sense and just kind of like follow your intuition, that's when the magic happens. And that's when you create practices and businesses or whatever you want it to be that are sustainable, because you pick something that's easy and that feels good. And then all of a sudden now you have a business that's not hard. Like if I had picked super complicated oil paintings at this time in my life with my 2 kids, I have a 7-year-old and a 2-year-old now, that's too much. It's too complicated for me right now. I do have visions of that. I do desire that. I want to make oil paintings. I want to make animations of my drawings, and I know I will, but I'm like building towards it. And that's kind of the frame of mind we want to get ourselves in. So if you have your workbook, I want you to write down, skip the what feels hard about starting, because we all kind of like probably thought about that when we were joining this challenge. The first thing that I did when I truly was able to let go, the first thing I did was really recognize that I had to say goodbye to my old creative self. My old creative self I was young in my 20s. I had a day job that, I could come home from work. I had no responsibilities. I was not responsible to anyone. I was living in Cambridge, Massachusetts with like 5 other artist friends. And I could go in my room and just do whatever I wanted. I could draw, I could stay up late. I had to say goodbye to that version of myself, because the new version of myself had young kids that if I was drawing, they would grab my pencil. If I was doing anything, they would like give me 5 minutes, but then they needed a snack or like whatever. I didn't know how to be that creative person, the creative person that had to like pare down their style and their materials and change it up to fit my life circumstances. So I want for you to think about, has anything changed in your life since the last time you felt truly creative and consistent and in the flow? So for me, it was kids, but for you, it might be a health issue. It might be you're caring for, elderly parents, whatever it is. What is that thing? I want you to write in the workbook or just write it down on a piece of paper. What version of yourself are you perhaps saying goodbye to? And really kind of like give yourself that space to feel sad, like, yeah, it sucks. Like it sucks to have a health issue. Some people are dealing with like chronic pain or like long COVID or ADHD or like it's really intense health issues. Some people are dealing with like money issues, or they have like 3 jobs and it's just like everything they can do. Some people are single moms. Like there are so many things going on, but what I'm here to say is you can still show up for your creative self. It's just going to have to look different, and we're going to have to compromise, and nobody wants to hear that. As an artist, I certainly didn't want to. I didn't want to hear that. Like, Leanne, you have to compromise. You can't do those super complicated animations right now. You can't do oil painting right now. I didn't want to hear that. Are you kidding me? I'm like, I'm an artist. I do what I want. But by saying goodbye to that just for a second during this season of my life and trusting that I will get there eventually, and saying, I'm going to say goodbye. I'm going to do what feels easy and, doable right now. It just opened everything up for me. So I want you to write that down in your workbook. What version of yourself are you saying goodbye to? And if you feel inspired, share it in the comments. Anna is dealing with COVID, had it 3 times. Oh my gosh, awful. Yeah, brain fog. So many people are dealing with that, and headaches. share in the comments if you want to say, like, who are you, what version of yourself are you saying goodbye to? And then if there's anyone in here that's having trouble picking what to do, because on day 3, I'm going to ask you to start a creative practice or a personal project. You do not have to finish it. You do not have to continue it. I just want you to feel what it feels like to start it for one day. I want you to get in the practice of going through this mental work to prepare yourself so that you can start anything after this challenge, and that you'll kind of recognize, like, wow, you know what? Starting doesn't start with taking action. There's steps before taking action that have to happen. There's a lot of mental work and preparation that needs to happen to start. So you'll be armed with this so you can start anything in the future. So I want you to take the pressure off and pick what your intuition is guiding you towards. So I have a little exercise to bring you through in your workbook. If you scroll to page 2, it says, what comes easy to you in terms of medium or topic? And if you don't have the workbook, just grab a piece of paper. And if you already know what you want to do, great. I want you to like really visualize this and still go through this exercise because it might give you some ideas. So when I'm talking to people who are struggling with like, I don't know what to pick, I have like a million ideas, I really try and have them think about the medium that they might be drawn to using or the topic that they're super interested in right now. So for the medium, by that, I just mean like if you're an artist, are you using watercolor paints? Are you drawing with pencil? Are you painting? Are you sculpting? Like, what is the medium that this work is going to come through your body? How are you going to physically use your hands? If you're a musician, are you on a piano? Are you, composing in Pro Tools or whatever audio program? Like, if you're a writer, are you writing physically with a pen or are you in Google Docs? Like, how are you physically showing up? What is the medium that you're using? And I want you to think about like very sensory, and it might not make sense. What would feel really good in your body to do? I remember last time there was this woman who joined who was like, you know what, I really want to start writing, but I'm on the computer all day for work. And what we came to is like, get a bunch of index cards and just write with pen, like have fun. Like, what does your body want to do right now? Because when we do what feels good, that's what makes us want to return to it. You think about my 2-year-old. I remember when I gave him Play-Doh for the first time, he was like, oh my gosh, you can squish it, you can roll it, you can smear it. Like it felt so good in his hands. And the next day, immediately, it was like, where's the Play-Doh? Where's the Play-Doh? I've got to have that Play-Doh. The next day, Mom, Play-Doh, Play-Doh, because he wanted to return to what felt good for his body. So for you, this whole time, you might have thought like, I'm gonna, do this specific project, but what your body really wants to do might not make sense right now. And just allow that to be, because it's not forever, it's just temporary. So for you, like if you want to write a book and you're like, okay, I'm gonna get my laptop and open like Word document and like start typing. But if you're feeling like any like friction there, maybe don't start there. Like, don't start on the computer. Start where your body wants to start. Maybe you want to hold a pen, like, and just write in your journal or whatever. Like, allow yourself to do that, because what you want to do is just get on the entry ramp. That's what we want to do, because the entry ramp is gradiated. Like, it's going to take you to where you're going to go. It's going to take you to the Word doc eventually, but you've got to start in a place that's going to build consistency. And to do that, you have to pick something that you're going to feel good doing, because our human body returns to what feels physically good for us to do. So that's why I started with pen on paper for those drawings. I knew I wanted to be in Procreate, but I started by actually journaling in the morning. I would get up at 5 a.m. with my son and just journal while he was like giving me 2 seconds, like playing with some toy. I had my journal out. I had a cheap little notebook in like every room in the house, so that wherever we were, I could just journal. And then eventually I would start to like sketch something. And then I would like take a picture of it, you know, at night or while he was napping, and trace over it and procreate. And like, that's enough. Like, why can't that be? And look where it's brought me. It's insane. So think about the medium and let us know, you know, in the comments if you're thinking of something that like you didn't quite expect. Like maybe you want to use pastels and like you've never used pastels, or maybe you want to play on the keyboard instead of composing in a software program, like whatever it is for you. And then if you can't think of the medium, or in addition to thinking of the medium, think about the topic. Like, is there anything that you could just talk about for days? And for me, when I started, that was gut health. I was like listening to podcasts about gut health. I was not reading, I was listening to audiobooks because I couldn't sit down and read. Listening to audiobooks. I was just like obsessing about the microbiome for some reason. I was just like so into it. So that's what I chose as the thing to draw about. Because I was like, well, I'm already like filling my brain with it. I might as well just draw about that. And I also drew about my struggles, like returning to art. Like, what are people going to think? Like those drawings that you saw. So is there a topic or a theme that you're just really into right now? And it could be having that be the anchor. And maybe the medium changes. Like maybe one day you're writing about parasailing, and then another day you're drawing a picture about parasailing. Like pick what the anchor is. It could be the medium, it could be the topic, or it could be both. And that's a great way to think about like, how am I going to pick something? And, you know, there's a lot of people that said they struggle to pick one thing. And I get that. It is hard because as creatives, we're just like, we want to do it all. And as we're doing something, we get another idea and another idea and another idea. And for this challenge, I want you to have a separate list of all the other ideas that you think of, because you're going to think of them as we go. Write them on the list. Tell yourself, I will get to those eventually. I will. I promise. I will get to those other ideas. But for this challenge, I'm going to pick one thing, and I'm going to start it on day 3. I'm going to feel what it feels like to start it on day 3. And that's all I'm going to do, just for the sake of this challenge. And I want you to feel how that feels, because it might give you some ideas of how you can narrow in as you move forward. And then another thing I want you to do is think about how can you lower the stakes with this goal, like I did, where I was like, ooh, I'm gonna, you know, do digital drawings and Procreate. And I was like looking at all these other people's Instagrams of like these amazing, like colorful, textured things. And I had that argument with myself and that like gut check and feeling that friction and that kind of like red flag of like, it's too much. It feels overwhelming. If it feels overwhelming, it's too much. I want you to pare it back. I want you to set the bar so low for this challenge that it almost feels insulting. You're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm just going to do this simple thing in relation to my personal practice or project. And it could be as simple as like, if you want to start drawing, on day 3, I'm just going to draw a circle. That's all I'm going to do. I'm going to draw a circle. If you're a writer, on day 3, I'm just going to write the word circle. If you're a musician, I'm just going to play on the piano, circle. I'm going to sing circle. Like, so simple. Because what you want to do is make it so easy to start. And if after you do that for a couple days, you draw a circle the next day. You draw a circle the next day. 7 days later, you're still drawing that circle. On day 8, your brain isn't going to be able to stand it. It wants to do more because our brains are set up to solve problems. And when you make it so easy, it's exciting to solve that problem. So if you're drawing a circle, like maybe on day 8, now you're like messing around a little bit. You're drawing like little doodles around it, or you're drawing a face in the circle. Like we can't stand it. We have to build on it. But when we start with the bar too high, we get paralyzed. And what do? We don't do anything because it's too hard. So I want to encourage you to lower the stakes, take the pressure off. Think of something that you can make so simple. I remember there was a woman, Sarah, and Jenny will put this podcast episode in the comments. I forget what episode it is, but she came to me and she really wanted to start a new career. She wanted to get into interior design. She had no background in it. And she was like, I want to do interior design. I'm like, okay, cool. What do you like feel like doing? And I went through this exercise, like what would feel good for your body? And she's like, honestly, like I really just want to do something with my hands, because she was like a social media manager and she was on the computer all day. And she really wanted to write and collage. I was like, perfect. And she was like, how is that perfect? That has nothing to do with interior design. And what we came to is like, why don't you write and collage about interior design? Why don't you cut up all those magazines that you have about interior design, paste it on a new page every day, and write what you like about it? And what's going to happen after 30 days, 60 days? You start to discover you have a point of view about interiors. And isn't that a great starting point to get a new career, to have a point of view about interior design? And what she did after 100 days, and I'm going to share more about, I have a program called 100 Epic Days. I'm going to share more about that on day 3. By day 100, she was inspired to take an interior design class. So she started to take this online course about interior design. Whereas when she started, that was too intimidating. She felt imposter syndrome. But after 100 days of like scrapbooking and writing about all these magazine pictures, she felt empowered. And she felt like, yeah, I do have something to say here. So it could be something like that. So let me know if you need to work through that. Like, how can I lower the stakes? In the Facebook group, if you need help, that's my favorite thing to do, because it's very much like a puzzle. Like, ooh, how could we pare this back? How could we make this more simple? So go ahead and write that in your workbook. And then another thing I wanted to share is think about how can, if you have a project, for my project people, if you're like, I want to write a book, I want to make a card deck, I want to, whatever it is, if it's a concrete, like beginning and end project, think about how can you make a creative practice in service of the eventual project? Like put the project aside and think about a creative practice, like a ritual or a habit or this daily thing that you could do that relates to the project, but is not quite the project yet. And I unknowingly did this with those drawings. So I was doing drawing after drawing after drawing every day, just loving making these mindset and manifestation drawings. And by the end, by day 100, I was getting so many people being like, because I had them as art prints on my shop. They're like, oh my gosh, I have so much trouble picking one. I just love them all. And I kept hearing that. And I was like, yeah, me too. And I realized, I was like, you know what? These are really kind of like a tool. And then it dawned on me, I was like, I should make these into a card deck, because that's what you can do. You can flip through them all. So like, I didn't have that thought going in, but that's what I did. So that daily act of drawing was a creative practice in service of the project. So my next 100 days, I figured out how to turn that into a card deck. So that's what I mean. Like, if you want to write a book, I had a woman, Corinne. She also has a podcast episode where she really wanted to write a book, but she had not written for her personal creative self in a really long time. And she had like this very high profile job at a financial institution. And she has like 2 kids. And we were talking, I'm like, okay, well, how are we going to do this book? And what we came to is like, you know what? It's not about the book. It's about just returning to my creative writing again. And so what she came to is, I'm just going to write a short story about my childhood every day. And that's what she did. She would just write a quick little short story about a memory that she had about her childhood every day. And she did that for 100 days. And by the end, she said, oh my gosh, like I can call myself a writer again. Like I didn't feel that since college, you know, it had been years. And she has been in this like high profile job writing for her job. You know, she does a lot of writing for her job, but that's not from your heart. That's not your personal creative writing. She wanted to get back to that place. And so now she feels empowered to now write the book because now she's a writer. Now she's the type of person that writes every day. So like give yourself that grace and trust that it will get there. Like I'm not taking anything away from you by saying you have to compromise. I'm not saying that you can't have that more complex project. All I'm saying is we want to simplify and make it so easy. It almost seems silly. It almost seems like, what's the point of this? How could this possibly get me there? That's what you want to do. And you want to do that from a place of intuition, because that's what's going to lead you to what it's supposed to be. And it's not going to make sense a lot of times. Like, drawing about gut health, how does that turn into a coaching business? Like, what? You know, like I never would have guessed I would get here. How does that turn into an online store with an affirmation deck about mindset and manifestation? Like it doesn't, right? It doesn't make any sense that I started with these little drawings about gut health. But that's what I had to do to get on the path to get to where I was supposed to be. So trust yourself and give yourself permission. Like I have this little permission slip in our workbook, but if you don't have the workbook, just write down like literally with your name, like I, Leanne, give myself permission to do what is easy, because culturally, I think we don't give ourselves permission to do that. Our culture wants everything to be like so impressive and so like flashy and so like for a reason and so like it's gonna make money and like all these things. And I want us to give ourselves permission to do the opposite, to do what doesn't make sense, to do what's easy, to start there. So, you know, write a little bit in the workbook too about like, give yourself permission to do that and trust yourself. So the workbook is in the files section of the Facebook group. It's also in an email. If you're not seeing my emails, just search your email for Epic Bones. There's a link to download it in there as well. So that's what I wanted to share for day one. I want to get you in this frame of mind of thinking about your personal project or creative practice in this new way, where you're lowering the stakes, you're supporting yourself with what feels easy, and you're really like acknowledging that perhaps you're in a different stage in your life, you're in a different place now. And so what you're making might look different than you want it, and that's okay. It will lead you to where it's supposed to go, and just really trust that. So I hope this was helpful, everyone. We're almost at an hour here. I can't believe it went by so fast. Let me know in the comments if this helped you. I'm so glad you're all here. And I'm going to announce the giveaway winner in a second. But I want to share tomorrow all those objections that you might have written down, all those reasons, or all that, the inner critic that might be popping up and be like, I can't make it easy, because that's what we're going to address tomorrow. So tomorrow we are going to really spend some time identifying and unblocking any limiting beliefs that you have. And those objections and those clues might be limiting beliefs that you didn't even realize that you had. So we're going to find expanders to kind of break that open. I'm going to teach you this process for how you can do that. And it's really a lot of fun. We're also going to go into some logistics of planning your project so that day 3, you're really set up for success. So we're going to meet the same time, same place, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, live in this group tomorrow. And there's going to be a homework thread posted in our group. In that homework thread, your homework is to pick what you're going to start on day 3. So you're just going to set your intention. You're going to say, like, I'm going to start journaling in the morning, or I'm going to start painting with watercolor, or I'm going to start playing on the piano, whatever it is. I want you to pick your thing that you're going to start on day 3, and that's your homework. Very simple. Just pick it. Just take some time and really think through what we covered here today. Lower the stakes, make it easy, and set that intention. And again, you don't have to stick with it. So take the pressure off. Just randomly pick something if you can't think of anything. And if you really can't think of anything, pick my circle example. I'm going to draw a circle. I'm going to write the word circle. I'm going to play circle on the piano, whatever it is. That's your homework. And there will be a winner for each day. So each day we're going to have homework. And each day I'm going to randomly pick one person that's going to win a prize. So the prize for tomorrow is another affirmation deck. It won't be an affirmation deck every time, but that's going to be the prize for today and for tomorrow. So I'm going to pull up the winner for the giveaway. When I was promoting this challenge, some of you participated in that. Cody Walker is the winner for the giveaway when I was promoting the challenge. So congrats to Cody. I will reach out to you and we can figure out how to get you your affirmation deck. I don't know if she's here live, but that's really fun. I love doing these giveaways. So definitely follow up in the homework, everyone. And I don't know what else I'm supposed to share with you. I wrote down some notes here. I think that's it. Yeah, I'm looking forward to tomorrow. I hope you enjoyed this so much. And we'll follow up tomorrow and figure out those limiting beliefs so that we can further just unblock and get ready to start our thing on day 3. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining, and I'll see you tomorrow. Okay, take care, everyone. Bye.